PR Connections Radio presents.
Welcome to Vegas Hockey Hub here on PRConnectionsRadio.com, the voice of new media. I'm your host, Ian Rakelli, and we have a good show planned for you as we are going to be breaking down the Vegas Golden Knights and doing a prospect watch to begin the brand new year for the first show of January 2024. And we are doing this alongside the PR Connections Radio Marathon Show on New Year's Day. I want to give a shout out to Guy and Dana for all the amazing work they put into the Marathon Show. They are putting in a lot of effort into that. So I will say, as doing a part of it, this is going to be one of the episodes, and this is going to be that episode for the New Year's Day Marathon Show. So when it comes to the Vegas Golden Knights and the Prospect Watch for January 2024, we have to get into first doing a little bit of some plugs for PR Connections Radio. So if you want to go to the website and check out all of the shows that are on this network, they have about a dozen shows on the network, and including Vegas Hockey Hub. So if you want to go and support this channel, support the network, I would say go to the website, prconnectionsradio.com, and check out all of the content we have on there. If you also want to go to the YouTube channel, PR Connections Radio, we upload every single show to our channel. So if you want to subscribe, that would help out the channel very much. And if you want to go to the Facebook, and they have all social media platforms on there as well at PR Connections Radio. And if you want to follow your host, it is at Ian Rakelli18. Right down there is my Twitter handle. So if you want to follow me on social media, that would be good. Now, getting into the Vegas Golden Knights Prospect Watch, we have to go into the Henderson Silver Knights. First, we have to talk about Gregory Dyanchenko, the waiver claim that the Henderson Silver Knights acquired from the Florida Panthers back in the August, late September. Now, I will mention about Gregory Dyanchenko, kind of give you a little bit of a background on him, because he's actually an interesting kind of player using what he has done throughout his career. So Gregory Dyanchenko, if the name does not give it away, this is a guy who has come from Europe. He is someone who's actually had to spend a lot of time making it to the NHL. And in fact, he has actually played a little bit of time in the NHL, but he is still deemed as a prospect in the Vegas Golden Knights organization. So for Gregory Dyanchenko, the guy who is a 23-year-old winger for the Vegas Golden Knights and the Henderson Silver Knights currently, he was drafted 15th overall by Florida in 2018. This is a guy who's already played professional hockey before, as he played in the KHL in Russia back in 2017 and 2018. So this is a guy in Gregory Dyanchenko who has already played well over 50 games in professional hockey before getting his first official chance by going to the NHL later on. So for Dyanchenko, him playing in the KHL, he actually got to help his team go to the playoffs in the KHL back in 2018 and then in 2019 as well. In fact, he actually has one career playoff goal in the KHL. So for somebody like Dyanchenko to have one playoff goal in 16 playoff games in the KHL, this is before he would eventually get drafted by Florida. And then he would go to the Florida Panthers to start his professional career in North America. And what would happen is that in 2020, 2021, he would begin his professional career as he would play for the Syracuse Crunch in 2020, 2021. And in 15 games played, he would have 5 goals and 9 points for Syracuse. So not bad for Dyanchenko in his first action in North America, him having 5 goals in 15 games. And then finally, he would actually make his NHL debut in March of 2021. He'd go on to play 7 NHL games in 2021 for Florida, registering 4 points in that stretch. He would then be optioned back down to the AHL for 2021, 2022. He'd play for Charlotte, and he would have 9 goals in 30 games played for Charlotte. It actually had 18 points in that span. So not bad for Dyanchenko, kind of showing that he could put the puck in the back of the net. He's a very good scorer in the AHL. Now, something that Dyanchenko actually went on to do was kind of remarkable. He'd only play in 1 NHL game in 2022 before playing 18 NHL games for Florida in 2022, 2023. But something interesting of note is that Gregory Dyanchenko would play only 1 career playoff game. Only 1. But it was the most valuable playoff game in Vegas Golden Knights history, as Gregory Dyanchenko would make his NHL playoff debut, filling in for Matthew Tkachuk in Game 5 of the Stanley Cup Finals when Florida would take on Vegas. Ironically, 4 months later, he would become a Vegas Golden Knight, and now he's playing in Henderson. Now, last season, Gregory Dyanchenko had 12 goals and 24 assists in 56 games for Charlotte. Now, why do I mention all of this and I kind of bring to you the backstory of Gregory Dyanchenko? It's because on October 5th, Gregory Dyanchenko would be put on waivers by Florida, and he would be claimed on the exact same day by your Vegas Golden Knights. And not only would he be placed on waivers again by Vegas, but it was for the sole purpose of sending him down to the AHL, and the Vegas Golden Knights would actually allow him to go past waivers and join the AHL and be with Henderson this season. Now, Gregory Dyanchenko, his stats in Henderson for 2023, 29 games played, 10 goals, 16 assists, which is a 26-point run. He does have a -6 plus minus, but this is the AHL. The plus minus really kind of doesn't factor much in the AHL. 20 penalty minutes, kind of the norm in the AHL. Now, one part that I do have to mention about Dyanchenko is that he's been playing on the top line for a majority of the games in the AHL. He's been playing alongside Adam Cracknell. He's been playing alongside somebody we're going to talk about later in the show. He's even played alongside Sheldon Rample, Gage Quinney. He's been doing pretty good for Henderson in the AHL. So for a guy like Gregory Dyanchenko to really look at his stats and analyze what he is doing, he has 10 goals in 29 games. He only had 12 goals in 56 games last year in Charlotte. So to say that Gregory Dyanchenko has evolved and has become a better player in Henderson, that is an understatement. Now, let me ask you a question. If you're Vegas and if you have an injury to somebody, all right, I'm just going to toss a few names out here. I'm not saying they're going to get injured, just for examples. Let's say that a guy like Keegan Kolesar is out for a while. Or let's say, for example, if something happens to Mark Stone and has to fill a gap on the wingers. Or if there is someone, for example, who goes down like a Paul Cotter. If you have someone on the wings who does get hurt, wouldn't it make sense to have Gregory Dyanchenko come in and play for Vegas in crucial moments later in the season? Because after all, not only has Gregory shown that he can play in the NHL, he has had 3 years of experience of playing in the NHL, playing in some games in some form of capacity in Florida. Not only did he show that he could play in professional hockey, I mean, heck, he did it in the KHL. He played a couple of seasons in the KHL before making the jump over to North America. So Gregory Dyanchenko, for someone like him, he has over 90 games of playing professional hockey at the top level. He has about 17 games worth of playoff experience at the top level. So I'm going to make an argument to you that if someone goes down, if there's an injury that happens to anyone on the Vegas Golden Knights, and obviously we don't want it to happen, but if there was an injury that occurred in Vegas, I would not be shocked if this guy right here, Gregory Dionsenko, who was a former 15th overall pick, that's a big deal, by the way, that's a middle of the first round pick. For a guy like Dionsenko, 23 years of age, I say that your Vegas Golden Knights would take a chance on him and bring him up to the main roster if some injuries were bound to happen later in the season and they had to bring some people back up. Now, once again, I'm going to show the stats one more time just to let everyone see it on the screen. Dionsenko, 29 games played, 10 goals, 26 points, and 20 penalty minutes. Now, I mentioned as we are doing our Vegas Golden Knights prospect watch for January 2024, as we are doing this on the PR Connections Radio New Year's Marathon Show. I'm your host, Ian Kelly. I mentioned that Dionsenko had a line mate in Henderson who I would be mentioning later in the show. I mentioned how I was going to be talking about somebody who he has been sharing a line with in the AHL. And getting into that guy, it is someone we've talked about plenty on this show in the past, but we're going to bring him up once again. Former first-round pick in the 2020 NHL draft by Vegas, and that is Brendan Brisson. Now, Brendan Brisson is someone who you could really sit here and say has been mixed with the Vegas Golden Knights. On one hand, there are people who look at what he can do and say, you know what, he's only 22 years old. He still has time to develop. He still has time to eventually become this great player for Vegas. But unfortunately, there's also been some negatives about Brendan Brisson as well. Now, before I get into the negatives and the positives, let's give you a little bit of a backstory just in case if you did not know who Brendan Brisson is. Now, Brendan Brisson played for the Green Bay Gamblers of the United States Hockey League during his junior career. While playing for the Gamblers and then eventually the Chicago Steel, he would finish with 59 points while playing in the USHL. He'd be named to the All-USHL first team. He'd be named to the USHL All-Rookie team. And more importantly, he would be named the Rookie of the Year in the United States Hockey League. His performance while being in the minors, while being in juniors, would lead to him getting a scholarship at University of Michigan. So Brendan Brisson would begin at Michigan. He would actually play 2 seasons at University of Michigan. He would actually help the University of Michigan go on and actually be part of the All Big Ten second team with Brendan Brisson. Now, with University of Michigan, he had 24 games with 10 goals and 21 points in year 1. Then he had 21 goals, 42 points in only 38 games in his final season while playing collegiate hockey. Now, the reason why this is so invaluable and so important is because at this point, Brendan Brisson was already drafted by your Vegas Golden Knights. So he was already drafted based off of what he did in the United States Hockey League. What he did in his junior career is why he was drafted by Vegas. University of Michigan was a cherry on the top. So what ends up happening with Brendan Brisson, 2021, 2022, he would play 9 games that year for Henderson. He would have 3 goals for 8 points in 9 games. And so many people were having huge expectations for Brisson having his first season of playing full minor league hockey. How is he going to do? How is he going to perform as a member of the Henderson Silver Knights? Keep in mind, Brendan Brisson was already on the Team USA's roster for the 2022 Winter Olympics. He also was with Team USA in the World Juniors in 2021. So when you really stop and analyze it, this was a guy who, Brendan Brisson, he's played for Team USA, he's played junior hockey, he's played college hockey. How would he do in his first season of playing professional hockey? And in 2022, 2023, Brendan Brisson would unfortunately not kind of live up to expectations. 17 goals, 20 points in 58 games, but he did have a whopping 56 penalty minutes, almost averaging a penalty minute per game. So for Brennan Brisson, this first season was kind of underwhelming. And I know some people were expecting him to kind of, take a step up in the next year. Would he see how he could perform in year 2 of playing professional hockey full time? So Brennan Brisson's stats in Henderson this season, in 31 games, he has 9 goals, 22 points, and 20 penalty minutes. And I will say for Brennan Brisson, once again, you have to look at this from 2 different perspectives. The first perspective is that Brennan Brisson is playing, as one of the best players on Henderson. 9 goals among the leaders in Henderson, 22 points among the top players in Henderson. But unfortunately, it's not a situation where I would look at those stats and I would say that he is ready to go to the NHL. And when you're a former first-round pick, there's a lot of expectations. There's a lot of weight on your shoulders. So I will say with Brennan Brisson, and like I said, with him playing his second full season playing for the Golden Knights organization, I have to be kind of brutally honest here about Brennan Brisson. He is going to be a good player, but at this point in time, I don't see him as a future top 6 forward in the NHL. I don't see him as a future star in the NHL. At this point, looking at Brennan Brisson, looking at his stats and kind of seeing what he has done in Henderson, I really have to call it for what it is. Brennan Brisson, if he does eventually make it to the NHL, and I believe at some point he will be a member of the Vegas Golden Knights, his ceiling will be a middle 6 forward in the NHL. And that's his ceiling. Now, what's most likely going to happen is that he will be a bottom 6 forward. He'll play some games in the NHL, but I think the floor for Brennan Brisson is that he will be a split 2-way contract in between the NHL and AHL. So for Brennan Brisson at this point in time, I wish there was more I could say about what's going on with Brennan Brisson, but the reality is, and basing off the stats that we're looking at once again with Brennan Brisson, he is just not developing at a star level. So Brennan Brisson, once again, I'm going to say this on the show, his ceiling is a middle 6 forward. His prediction, my prediction for him, will be a bottom 6 forward, and his floor will be a 2-way contract. Now, I do want to mention this before we move on to the ECHL, because Brennan Brisson is currently ranked as the number 3 prospect in the Golden Knights system. And I just wanted to quickly mention this because 2 players have graduated from the Golden Knights prospect list. Now, back in September, before the season went on the air, we did our prospect ranking, our prospect tier list we did on Vegas Hockey Hub, and I had 2 players ranked in essentially the top 5 with the Golden Knights. And the first one was Pavel Dorofeev, and the second was Kaden Korczak. Now, because they have played so many games now in the NHL, Pavel Dorofeev is no longer considered a prospect, and Kaden Korczak is no longer considered a prospect. So with Brennan Brisson, he has now been elevated because of that. So when it comes to your Vegas Golden Knights and seeing the prospects right now, Lucas Cormier is still the number 1 prospect for your Vegas Golden Knights. David Edstrom is 2, but Brennan Brisson is still ranked high on the Golden Knights prospect list because he was a former first-round pick. But I'll be curious to see what happens with Brennan Brisson long-term. But I just wanted to quickly mention this, that because Dorofeev and because Korczak have played enough games in the NHL, they have essentially graduated from being a prospect, and they are now full-time NHLers. So that was the AHL section of it. Talking about your Henderson Silver Knights, talking about Gregory Dionsenko and Brendan Bryson. Now, getting over to the ECHL and talking about the Savannah Ghost Pirates, Patrick Gay is someone that we have mentioned on this show before. He was somebody that was taken 145th overall in the 2022 NHL draft. And I remember at the time reading his statistics out loud, and I wondered how he fell to 145th overall. Now, just a quick summary of what he did. Now, Patrick Gay, playing for the Charlottetown Islanders, in his final season in junior hockey, he had 68 games played, 55 goals, 104 points in his final season. Normally, when somebody would score over 100 points in juniors, that is going to be a first, second round pick easy. But unfortunately, when it comes to him, this was just a situation where he kind of fell in between the cracks there. So the Vegas Golden Knights were able to pick him up in round 5 of the 2022 NHL draft. He would go report to the Savannah Ghost Pirates of the ECHL. And in 49 games last year, he had 16 goals, 52 points, and 18 penalty minutes. So he averaged over a point per game in the ECHL in his debut playing professional hockey. Now, what also happened with Patrick Gay is that he played 17 games that year for the Henderson Silver Knights. And playing for the Henderson Silver Knights, he would actually have a little bit of success, as he would have 2 goals and 5 points in 17 games in Henderson. Now, he would be brought back for this season. And I will say, when it comes to Patrick, his stats with Savannah Ghost Pirates, he has actually been the best player on this team. Hasn't even been close. There really isn't an honorable second. Patrick Gay, his stats with the Savannah Ghost Pirates, 8 goals, 23 points in 17 games when it comes to Savannah. Now, he has also had 8 penalty minutes, but most people are not going to really acknowledge that. Now, what I like about the Savannah Ghost Pirates is that if you actually look at his projected stats, there is projected stats on this website. Patrick Gay, in 59 games in this year in the ECHL, if he stays at the pattern he has now, would have 28 goals and 80 points in 59 games. And I will say on record, if he does have an 80-point season in the ECHL, he should definitely graduate to the AHL. Because you have someone right here in Patrick Gay who I look at and go, all right, he's someone who's played in the ECHL. This is year 2 of him being with this organization. So him having 52 points last year, him having well over 20 points this year, he's done a relatively good job. Now, he has also played a few games in Henderson as well. So he had played 10 games in Henderson this year, opposed to 17 games he played last year. So for a 5th-round pick, he has done a relatively good job. And I will say, when it comes to Patrick Gay, he is someone who has played 2 seasons in the ECHL, 2 seasons in the AHL, and he has done a stand-up job. So I will not be surprised if he becomes a minor league staple in Vegas's system. Because, with Patrick, I kind of mentioned that there was one thing holding him back, unfortunately, and that is his height. Patrick Gay, 5'9", only 180 pounds. And when you're in the NHL, unless you're Jonathan Marchessault, and even he was an undrafted free agent, it's an unfortunate reality, is that your height can unfortunately cause you to drop in the NHL draft, regardless of how good your stats are. So I will say, for a guy like Patrick, definitely been a good minor league player for your Vegas Golden Knights. And we have one last player we have to discuss here on the Prospect Watch, and that is the goaltender right here, and Michael Bouillon, the undrafted free agent that the Vegas Golden Knights have had the last 2 seasons. And I will say, with him, he actually did make some news recently, as he was called up to the AHL. and he played for the Henderson Silver Knights in a couple of games. Now, Bouillon's stats with the Savannah Ghost Pirates: 18 starts this year, 8 wins, 5 losses, and 2 overtime losses for the Savannah Ghost Pirates. Currently has a goals against average of 2.67. And I will say for the goaltender in the ECHL, he also played a few games in the AHL. His stats in Savannah kind of goals against average, 1-1 record, and 94. Now he is kind of building up confidence in the ECHL. He's actually doing a pretty good job as kind of working his way into professional hockey. Now this is his third season playing professional hockey. 2021, 2022, he played for the Norfolk Admirals of the ECHL. 2022, 2023, he split time between the Norfolk Admirals and then the Savannah Ghost Pirates, who are the affiliate of the Vegas Golden Knights. Now this season, he is splitting time between the ECHL and then a 2-game cup of coffee he's had in Henderson. So I wanted to very quickly shout him out because he is a goaltender who's not getting much attention, but is playing in his second season in Savannah and finally got a bit of an opportunity with the Henderson Silver Knights. So as we have about 4 minutes left on this show, doing our Vegas Golden Knights prospect watch for January 2024. Now, I normally like to go to UNLV hockey because this is a team that definitely deserves a spotlight. Now, we recently, when we talked about them, we mentioned Cole Wyatt. And Cole Wyatt has been one of the best players UNLV has had over the last couple of seasons. However, there is someone that I do want to shout out from the UNLV team, as there is someone who's done relatively well in this organization this season, as we are going to be talking about with UNLV in 19 games this season. Of course, Cole Wyatt, who we mentioned earlier, but I will say for Rob McCollum, the defenseman, he has done a good job as well. Let me explain why. Rob McCollum, a defenseman, 18 games played, 5 goals for 18 points. And this is someone that I really look at, and he has become a really good defenseman. He's someone who's done a relative job into a few other players on the UNLV roster. Alex Johnson, defenseman, he's averaging almost a point per game. You have Bradley Gallant, who's averaged 26 points in 19 games. And then Max Johnson has also had 27 points in 19 games played. So for UNLV, there's some good players. I also have to give a lot of credit to the coaching staff of UNLV. And for anyone who wants to know how you can watch UNLV, they play at City National Arena in downtown Summerlin. So if you are in will be on January 5th and 6th. So January 8th and 9th, my apologies. January 9th and 8th, the games for UNLV at City National Arena. I will guys going down hockey. This is a game we have been fun to watch last season ever since they became an AC situation there, and they've been a lot of fun to watch. So, we'll watch for January 2024, and I'm your host, Ian Rakelli. Once again, I want to give a shout out to Guy Dawson and Dana Wall Oakley for putting on a really good show and putting on this marathon on New Year's Day. So I'm your host, Ian Rakelli, and we will back to guide with for everyone watching. Spend another day watching hockey. Go support junior hockey.